It is Christmas, my dudes, and we have the Christmassiest thing we could find from Kilkerran. What do we got, Dave?
Well, we've not looked at a lot of Kilkerran on the channel in the past. Campbellton being one of the world's smaller whisky regions, certainly one of Scotland's smallest. And we just haven't come across much of their product. It's been out there, we've tried it a lot, but we haven't featured it, haven't given it the attention it deserves. So let's review that today, but looking at what promises to be a truly cracking example. This one here, this is an 8-year-old Kilkerran, bottled at full cask strength, a blistering 56.9% ABV.
Well, you say blistering for 8 years old. That's a bit of a leaker there. That's come down quite a long way.
That has shed a lot of alcohol, but again, look at that colour.
Oh yeah, that's been in some...
This is rich and dark. I've seen 20-year-old whiskey which is paler than this.
This has been in some naughty casks, and no mistake. The sherry is strong with this one.
It's obviously unfiltered, uncoloured. And, looking for clues on the cask types, there's little given away.
No, I think the clues are in the whiskey itself.
Yeah.
And we'll just have to investigate further. Kilkerran, funny old distillery, distilling since the 2000s there. Started really coming into force in 2014, and now it's just going from strength to strength. It is... Kilkerran is the brand rather than the distillery. It comes out of the Glengyle. Glengyle, that sounds about right, doesn't it?
Share home with Springbank. Yes,
they do. Well, similar interest, I suppose. They are part of the Springbank group umbrella. Yeah. And this one, not to get too ahead of the scores, this one, for something I picked up in December, might be my whiskey of the year.
Wow.
It's an absolute stunner. But let's start at the beginning, as we want to do.
Layers of sherry and toffee and honey. I often associate Campbellton whiskey with confectionery stores. There's so many sweet candied flavours.
Yeah, it's one of the absolute pillars of Springbank whiskey. Is
no exception.
People call it a strawberry compote kind of a thing. Strawberry, candy strawberry, which I don't eat a lot of candy strawberry, so I'll take their word for them. But
it's a bull in a sweet shop. Yeah,
there's a lot of that sort of lovely confected frosting. Not that this is Springbank, but it does share quite a lot of those Campbellton sensibilities. The other thing we'll pick up immediately is that this is a peated whiskey.
Interesting.
Much like Springbank, Kilkerran has an onboard house style of peating. They do a heavily peated, and it's very, very, very good, much like, funny enough, Springbank does a heavily peated with their Longrow, and it's also very, very, very good. This is not the heavily peated, it's their typical style, so maybe, I don't know, it could be a 5 ppm, nothing going to blow your head off, but it's pretty significantly there.
There's a hint of bicycle tyre repair kit, a little bit of rubber and cement.
And there's that lovely sort of slightly sacky fruitiness that you get along with Springbank as well. Yeah. I think I've tried older Kilkerrans than this, and I've never had one that's quite as complete as this one. This one is just tasting so mature, and it's suggested 8 years old, and I have it on pretty good authority that there is no top dressing in here. It's 8 years old. It's 8 goddamn years, and that's it. So those were a long 8 years old for this whiskey to mature, because it is some of the most, for a sub 10, the development here is astonishing. So let's try it full strength, see what we get. Ooh,
that's hot.
It's pretty hot.
It's
pretty hot.
There's initial waves of wood and fresh hewn timber and sap, but then there is rubber and coal smoke from that peat, and then underneath there are caramelized nuts, there's fruit, there's all kinds of sherry cask amazingness happening.
That incredible rich sweetness that hits you right before the alcohol kick comes in is just incredible.
Yeah.
If we had a stronger tongue, a more industrial palate, this could be an incredible whiskey to drink at full strength. Sadly, there's just too much zhuzh for the tongue to survive over the mid palate, and so though the finish is still intact, it's just a bit of a hard work without a bit of water, which is what this just cries out for, to just broaden things out here. And the moment water hits this whiskey, it turns into the absolutely magical beast that makes it my whiskey of the year. Suddenly, there's those Campbellton aromas that have just been kicked into a frenzy.
Yeah.
There is sort of strawberry jam, and there's weird, savoury, almost meaty qualities. There's almost... Part of this whiskey is even starting to tap into the beefiness that you get in significantly further across the country.
The nose is making me think of every Longrow and Springbank and Kilkerran I've ever tried.
Of all the Kilkerrans, this one is the closest to Springbank in terms of its style by more than half. It's astonishing how these whiskies have started to converge, at least in this particular bottling. It's almost a bit spooky because Kilkerran was always significantly different to Springbank, but now this one, really close, and that's not a bad thing. More Springbank in the world, sign me up. Also because Kilkerran is significantly cheaper. This is such a cheap whiskey. I don't know how they are doing it. You could go and pay you $300 for a Daft Mill or a new distillery, or you could pay 80 smackers for a bottle of Kilkerran like this one. It is so cheap.
Well, I don't want to exaggerate or indulge in hyperbole, but I think adding that little water has turned this into basically a magical elixir.
Yeah, it's basically it's the key to the treasure. They almost need to say on the bottle, mandatorily, please add 20% water to this, or you are screwing yourself.
Yeah.
And you really, really would be, because one, you'd be getting less whiskey, and two, you wouldn't be getting this absolutely just gorgeous whiskey. It is so, so good. It reminds me of... Oh, go ahead.
There is still that hint of peat and smoke on top, but underneath it's a sweet stewed fruit jam, marmalade, compote.
So fruity.
It is a, well, I'll use the word twice in one review, magical combination of rich, indulgent, succulent, fruity flavours.
It's really pretty effortlessly good. It reminds me of something else as well. It's almost a cross between a really good, really heavily sherried Springbank, even maybe a Longrow with that peat in there, and the cross is a weird one, but it's really evocative of the sherry matured, lightly peated Bunnahabhains.
Wow.
Because they kind of, the straight Bunnahabhain without the heavily peated levels, that has that very, very subtle peat that we're getting here. Well, maybe not quite so subtle on this one, but as I say, it's a coming together of those two things. And so if you have any parlance with either of those two distilleries, I think you'll find so much love here. But, God, we could go on for another 20 minutes with the tasting notes that get unlocked as you add water in here. And it's so thirsty, you can just keep putting it in.
Add
and you
another
keep
wee
getting...
smidge.
Because it hasn't even started to cloud yet. That's how much goodness is in here. It's just beginning to cloud now as I'm absolutely dunking the water in.
I've added a smidge more. Now there are notes of honey, and jasmine and lavender coming through.
Yeah. You just get more and more sweetness, and then, as Dave's just picked up, you get a floral character coming through. There's even violets in here, which is so weird. How they have done this, I really don't know, because I've always been a fan of Kilkerran. I thought it was fine whiskey, but this is world-beating whiskey.
I guess some very fresh first fill sherry, maybe some Oloroso.
I don't know how they've pulled this one off.
There's cask strength, but I don't know how many different casks or what cask types they were.
Yeah,
so
but
it's,
anyone that is in any kind of range of this particular batch, which, just to make it easy on you, doesn't have any kind of batch number, you just have to look it up. It's the 56.9% volume, bivol, I should say, cask strength, 8 years old, and that's all the stuff it's going to give you, but good golly, hunt this whiskey down. It is so, so good. So we'll stop beating around the festive bush here. Scores for this one, and this is going to be outright lastness, because this is an 8-year-old whiskey, but this is 94 points.
Yeah.
There's no talking around how good this whiskey is. It was such a surprise this year, and to have a whiskey I just bought on a whim because it was cheap in December, and that just immediately become not just the whiskey of the year, but the whiskey of the year by leaps and bounds. That's very pleasing to happen.
Yeah. This is on the top tier of Scotch whiskey for the country as a whole and for the region in particular, this is a Herculean exemplar, if I can borrow the phrase.
And at 8 goddamn years old as well.
Exactly. That in mind too. Like it just brings that youthful vigour, the punchiness of a young whiskey, but with this astonishing depth of character and colour and nuance. And I have no qualms awarding it 93 points.
Yeah, it is so good, and this gives me hope for the future because this is proof positive that whiskey quality has now trumped whiskey age. This is, if there was any proof that whiskey doesn't have to be 20 years old, 30 years old, 40 years old to be absolute blow your nuts off excellent, this is it, because this is 8 years old, and like I say, I've had it on pretty good authority that there's nothing older in here. If they can do this magic, they have solved the problem. Solved the problem. Had a bit of a hiccup there. So good was it. But and that, I think, really, really rings in a good future for Scotch whisky as we here teeter on the end of the year ourselves. And it's young whisky that's going to save us. Because old whisky, you will have noticed the amount of old whisky featuring on this channel has dropped off and off as the price has skated up and up because we simply can't bloody afford it. No one can. It's now an item like private jets for the super rich. But young whisky, especially international young whisky, which of course this isn't, but hey, well, it's not its fault. Young whisky that can do the magic this does, that's what's going to save us. That's what's going to get us out of the whiskey dungeon that we inhabit, staring up at the light. It's quality distilling like this. That's the answer. So bravo to Kilkerran on this one. It's absolutely striking stuff.
It's something of a Christmas miracle and a very fine way to end this year's reviews on a extremely high note. It is a superlative whiskey and just a fine way to round off 2021.
Yeah. Excellent stuff. Thank you all for staying with us this arduous last year on the channel. I know we've had some sleepy moments halfway through, but we are well and truly back in action here, and we've got all sorts of things planned for the new year. We have got rums. We've got rums upon rums, actually. I'm physically looking at more than 10 rums. It's
Rum for days.
I've never looked at that many rums before in my life. So there you go.
But no shortage of whiskies, some actual single malts on your single malt review.
Plenty of single malts. A couple of months we're going to have a dram fest. We're going to get you some footage out of that. Will I survive? I don't know. All bets are off. 2 days, nothing but whiskey. Whew, it'll be a trial. But anyway, we'll let you get back to your families, loved ones, Christmas presents, whatever you're up to. Maybe just a nice quiet time off. That's what I'm looking forward to. Everyone can bugger off and do their family stuff. I'm just going to sit here and play some goddamned Halo like the rest of you. All right. We won't take you any further, keep you any longer. Thank you so much for joining us over the whole year and today. This is Tim and Dave from the Single Malt Review signing off. Slàinte.